Okay. 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 Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Tree Shakers Show. We are so honored today to have Court Watch NOLA in the house with us. I'm hoping that the viewing of the press conference that they held on Tuesday was informative for our community, and I was excited to be able to hear just the hardcore facts about what's happening in um, in New Orleans criminal court. And just from a child, I've just noticed that I was raised to believe that criminal court was a place that I should fear. And I'm just honored. And it was just a goal that I had in the back of my mind that one day I would be able to be aware of opportunities to help to make that a place. I always looked at the scales of justice, and how can it be the scales of justice when I was explained to me what the scales of justice mean, and then to realize that that's a place where that's not safe for people like me, for Black people. I've always known it from a child. So to see the work that you all are doing now, it is so important to the people in this community. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you for the work ethic. I want to thank you for the time that you put in to give us to give these facts to the community. There's no amount of money that can pay for that. Absolutely everything should be funded for your program, that you should never have to worry about a dollar or somebody trying to buy you out. I don't want to have to worry about that. So I want you guys to be able to be independent
Kim,
and
we
do
are
the
so
work.
honored to be on your show. We are so honored to be on your show, and I think that people understand that we are independent and that we will report the facts, no matter how many people that we end up making angry by speaking truth. That's just the reality. And every time we have a public official, every time we have a public official that gets angry with us speaking truth, we have so many people in the community that support us even more, both as court watchers, to be court watchers, as well as with funding. So every single time we have a public official that speaks out against our work, we get even more support. So, I think that people recognize our value in New Orleans, and we're really thankful for that. We could be in a community where people do not want to hear about what's going on in their criminal courts, and that is not the case here in New Orleans, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Especially during this time of just global unrest about the injustices that are happening here in our country, let alone in our state, that we have been working on for quite some time. But um, I just want to, and you too, Veronica. I appreciate the work you're doing. The presentation you gave during the um during the press conference yesterday, I was amazed. I was in awe. And let's do some formal introduction too. Tell us your name and a little bit about your career. Because we can't do everything, Simone. We'd be here all day long.
So I'm Simone Levine. I'm the executive director of Court Watch NOLA. Before coming to Court Watch NOLA, I used to monitor the New Orleans Police Department under Susan Hudson. I was her deputy police monitor, and I used to monitor the officer-involved shootings in that office. I have spent time as a public integrity prosecutor, so that means prosecuting public corruption cases. I've spent time as a public defender, and I've spent time as a private defense attorney as well. And I just want to tell you what an honor it is to be on Tree Shakers. Kim, you do a great job.
Thank you, Simone. And Veronica.
And thank you, Kim. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you here today. A little bit about my background. I'm the deputy director here at Court Watch NOLA. I oversee kind of the collection and analysis of all of our data. What we do here is we not only observe what's in court and what the public can see, but we also send a lot of public records requests, which I know, Kim, you are very familiar with.
Oh yeah.
And I got that background also working under Simone at the Office of the Independent Police Monitor. Before that, I had worked at a few district attorneys' offices, including DA Canizaro's. I started my career as an investigative paralegal in the Frauds Bureau of the New York DA's office. But most recently, I kind of moved away from the prosecution side of it. I've, kind of like seeing the crux of all of these offices and how they work and what's effective these days.
Oh.
Bet you didn't know that about Veronica, did you, Kim?
No, I never knew. I never knew.
She's the badass that's in back of me. Everybody thinks I'm the badass.
I will say, Kim, I did not leave on good terms with Canizaro's office.
I think we just did the impossible. I think we rendered Kim Ford silent for a minute.
No, I'm trying really to get better with being silent. I hate the sound of my voice.
Aw, you shouldn't hate the sound of your voice. I love the sound.
Oh, you have a beautiful voice.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna edit that out, but so back to what we were talking about. So yeah, you guys, y'all come with some credentials, and I'll tell you, I just been doing this work long enough that I can tell when people have that wherewithal, because you guys are doing this. Report was just off the chain. Give us some of the statistics. I know, like last time we talked about the fact that Louisiana is #1 in murder, women being murdered by men, and new incarcerations.
Right. Yeah. So we get a #1 in a bunch of areas. We're one of the highest when it comes to women killed by men. We are the highest when it comes to wrongful incarceration for any county or parish over 300,000 people in the whole entire country. We're one of the highest in the state. We're one of the highest states in the country for incarceration. So we got a bunch of those medals, which are obviously not many medals at all. And when I talk about what's in our report, because there's a lot in our report, when we talk about it, we oftentimes talk about what we have been sued for and what we haven't been sued for. And that's a really important point to make, because one of the purposes that our organization really serves is a warning. We are a warning mechanism. We're an early warning mechanism for the courts. And if courts would listen and recognize the best practices that we bring to them, we really feel that a lot less of these lawsuits would be filed against them. And so we brought a lot of this stuff to their attention. And then, the other part of our report really explores the areas that we've already been sued in and we are not doing very well in. And, largely speaking, what those areas are victim rights and constitutional rights. And, and we're more than happy to sort of talk about some of our findings. We know that you have some public officials that listen to your program, and we just want to really underline that we here in New Orleans cannot afford any longer to be paying the bill of all of these public officials. We have to have them start listening to what the federal courts are requiring them to do and what we as community are requiring them to do. I mean, there's a reason why people are marching in the street right now.
Yes. Yes. And Simone, I feel like in saying that, I just feel like we've done so much work to try to help our elected officials realize the injustices that are continuing to happen in our community. We've done so much of that work. But this work that's being done right now, I have never seen more physical work being done, more action being done to take it to the streets than I have ever seen before. But guess what? Now I see more of like a response that we're being heard than I have ever seen before. And that, as a parent, I learned that rewarding when you reward good behavior, you get good results. And that's just the rule. When you reward good behavior, good results. And we have tried to come to the table and talk to our officials. And yeah, I just wonder, are the judges even looking at the statistics for where we fall in so many bad categories? Are they aware of that? And I feel like they have to be. They have to be aware that if I were a judge, I would be aware of what my colleagues are doing and how we are holding up as a team. Every person needs to have some self-reflection.
Great, and I do think that some stakeholders are doing a good job in hearing what the community is saying. For example, Deputy Chief John Thomas, we were just talking about this before, Deputy Chief John Thomas of the New Orleans Police Department, he was up there, up on the highway, and he was listening to protesters, and he was working with protesters. And John Thomas has an excellent reputation in the community for the work that he does. But that, a lot of these stakeholders are not actually hearing it. So for example, one of the things that we had found, and Veronica, I'm gonna leave you to talk about what the percentage of observations were when it came to judges that did not ask defendants about affordability of fines and fees and bail and bond. But one of the things that judges are being sued for right now is that they're making defendants pay these fines and fees that end up paying for our court system, and they do not ask about whether defendants can afford these fines and fees. And it is the same thing with bail. And they have been sued for this, Kim, and they have been sued for it, and they have been required many times by the federal courts to ask about affordability of fines and fees and bail and bond before they impose them. And they have not done it. And the reason why this is relevant is because not only are they in court, not only have they appealed the decisions, the judges appealed the decisions and lost those decisions with taxpayers' money, but they then had a legislative bill over in the Louisiana legislature, which did not get amended. It was supposed to say that judges are supposed to ask about affordability of bail and bond and fines and fees before imposing those fines and fees and bail and bond. And it did not get amended that way because the judges said, look, we're already doing this in court. We're already asking about affordability. We're not imposing fines and fees and bail and bond without asking about affordability. And they are absolutely not. And we have the boots on the ground. We're seeing what's happening. And so we've got to get this word out to make sure. I know that there has been a big movement to get the governor to veto the bill that was passed. There's additional money that legislative bill has required that an extra fine and fee that the district attorney's office in Orleans Parish is going to get, and an extra fine and fee that the sheriff's office in Orleans Parish is going to be getting. So more fines and fees on defendants who are absolutely, the good majority of them, 85% are indigent. They're poor people. They can't afford more fines and fees, and yet it's being levied on top of them. So some people are listening. Some people are not listening. Veronica, do you want to tell people the percentage observations?
Yeah, so in criminal district court, we saw that judges were asking, can you afford this fine and fee before imposing it? They only asked it 61% of the time. And that was the best court that we had observed, actually, because for bond, magistrate court, Cantrell, Magistrate Judge Cantrell said he did not ask whether they could afford the bond 73% of the
Somebody
time.
else. Who you connecting with? You supposed to be.
Okay, sorry.
And, you know, Magistrate Cantrell has been directly sued in this lawsuit. The other commissioners in magistrate court, they go up to 97%, did not ask whether they could afford that bond beforehand. In municipal court, 91% of the time, they were not asked whether they could afford the bond. For the fines and fees, they did do better. They were all about, with one exception, so Judge Sens was the exception, where he asked whether a defendant could afford a fine and fee 96% of the time.
Wow. Good.
Yeah. He's the chief judge there in municipal court. And the other judges ranged in the 40s, just about. There are 3 judges between 41% to 47%. The lowest being 22% that they did not ask whether the defendant could afford the fines.
And so why is that important? When you look at bail and bond, one of the things that our report had turned up was that in the first quarter of 2019, we just looked at a quarter of the cases, because there's thousands of cases that happen every year. The first quarter of 2019, the median bail amount in criminal district court, that's felony court, was $4,500. That is 4 times the amount of monthly income of an indigent person. And in 2019, 85% of criminal defendants were indigent. 85% of them were poor. Nobody can afford a $4,500 bail. And when you look at the fact that the majority of the crimes that people are arrested for, the absolute majority in New Orleans in 2019 were nonviolent offenses. So you are talking about cases where there is no violence. A lot of the time there are no crime victims, and you have an enormous amount of bail that is being charged to defendants. And, you know, and then you wonder why we are the capital in the country for wrongful incarceration, because we know, and this has definitely come out in COVID-19, that there are so many different reasons why people are taking pleas. And, you know, oftentimes it really has very little to do with whether they are in fact guilty. A lot of the times they have to get out to feed their family. A lot of the times they want to get out because of COVID-19. There's so many different reasons. And so one of the things that we looked at is we looked at how many people who are incarcerated are taking pleas as compared to not incarcerated, right? Because if you're not incarcerated, you might have some pressures on you to take a plea, but it's nothing compared to the pressures if you're incarcerated and you need to get out of that jail. We found that up to 71% of pleas were taken by incarcerated defendants, depending on which felony courtroom you went into. 71% of those pleas were by incarcerated people as compared to non-incarcerated people. And so one of the fears that we have is that just incarcerating individuals themselves leads to a high rate of wrongful conviction here in New Orleans, because we incarcerate so very much.
Okay, and let me say also that the average median income for Black people in the city of New Orleans is less than $20,000 a year, whereas the average median income that's for Black families. The average median income is $20,000. For white families, the average median income is almost $70,000. So if you go into court and you somebody's got to pay what a month's salary towards bail for one person in that family. It is devastating, you know, and that's what we deal with economically here in the city. And to have a court system that's how the court system is built, on the backs of Black people yet again.
Yep,
That we're
that's
the
right.
ones that's paying everything that we have to keep our loved ones out of jail, so much so that they're willing to plead guilty to things that they didn't do, just to lift the burden off of their family and
And
be
you're
able
also
to.
looking at, I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's all. Tell me.
I, you're also looking at crime victims who are majority Black and majority women. You know, the last time, nobody has gathered statistics on crime victims in the city except for us. The last time that we were able to gather it from NOPD, we found that the majority of crime victims were both Black and female. And, you know, and so then you have a community that is absolutely strapped by bail, by fines and fees. And then you have a community that's strapped by the trauma of being a crime victim and never getting the resources that they need in order for them to fully heal, in order for them to get through the trauma. Our district attorney's office has been sued a total of 4 different times for the treatment of crime victims.
Do you have
One
any
case,
any idea on how many times they've been sued?
4 times for crime victims
But I'm
in the
talking
most
about in
recent past.
general. That's
Oh,
just
in
in this
general?
area. No.
Yeah, no, I don't know about any lawsuits before Canizero came to power. You know, I'm sure that there must have been some. And I know that some of the wrongful conviction lawsuits were as a result of Harry Connick Sr.'s actions when he was in court. But I don't know about treatment on victims, whether there's been previous lawsuits before Canizero.
Yeah. So the fact that our bonds are averaging $4,500 is just so sad. And then during COVID-19, can we talk about the statistics for during COVID-19, because you did some separate statistics there for. I know the one that I was just floored by was and I was so active in trying to stop the police from doing these checks, these police checks during the COVID-19. But then to find out that every time the people got to court, they just released them. So it was for nonviolence. Can you just tell us the statistics on that?
I'm going to let Veronica take over here. That is her forte when it comes to COVID-19 statistics.
Yeah, Kim, you're referring to the statistics that we've been keeping ever since the governor issued a stay-home order, and we've kept up with it since that because COVID still affects us, but that's just an added layer on the backs of Black people. As you said, I mean, the system has been rigged against Black people for forever. Ever since,
yeah.
Exactly, since the system was started. And COVID-19 is just the newest obstacle to that. So half of all of the arrests that we have seen have been for non-violent charges. So that means that basically that is both felony court and municipal court arrests. They could have been summonses if NOPD policy allowed for it. The city policy, if you're arresting on a municipal offense, for most of them, they can be summonses, but not for any felonies or state misdemeanors. The other thing is that the magistrate court found no probable cause at all for the arrest and released 18 people who were arrested during the stay-home order up to May 31st. So essentially that's the court saying, why did you arrest this individual? I also have been pretty appalled that a lot of these municipal arrests have been on attachments, which is essentially a bench warrant that, if a defendant had previously failed to come to a scheduled court date, then the court would have issued a bench warrant saying, okay, we're going to attach them for the next scheduled court date. The problem, though, is that court has been closed this entire time. So they're picking them up on these old attachments that are in the system, and we have only been tracking attachments along with no violent charges. So completely non-violent charges in municipal attachments, 30 people have been arrested for that. Combining that with the data that we were talking about of why does someone plead guilty? There are numerous reasons, and 13 arrestees were 65 years and older, the oldest person being 74 years old during COVID. And we know that in Louisiana, the average age of people dying of COVID right now is 74 years old.
I was floored. I'm telling you, even now, it still makes my jaw drop. It still makes my jaw drop to hear these statistics,
Well, and I didn't even talk about race, because that is always the first part that we start at.
Yeah.
And deaths in Louisiana from COVID have been 54% Black. Arrestees since COVID have been 85% Black. And it's targeting Black men, because arrestees have been 81% men, and deaths from COVID have been 54% male. So over half of the deaths have been men. And over half of those deaths have been Black men.
And this falls in the bucket of things which we haven't been sued yet for, because we found that, and this, Kim, because you've been working on this issue as well, is during COVID-19, but in general, we have been pushing the police department to allow for more summonses. So summonses, you would receive a summons and be able to return back to court instead of actually being arrested, put into a jail where we know COVID-19 has spread, and then be forced into a bail hearing. And, what we've seen is, and this is a direct result of NOPD not being able to, literally their police chief, Chief Ferguson, has not allowed police officers to issue summonses for any state misdemeanors or any felonies, despite that Louisiana law allows for summonses to be issued for felonies. We've asked the chief to change this internal policy. We've asked him to issue summonses for non-violent, non-sex, non-domestic offenses, and he has flatly refused. And so then you have police officers that are forced into a situation where maybe they don't want to make an arrest. Maybe they don't feel that an arrest is warranted. Maybe they think that a summons is the right thing, but then they face internal discipline. They could be disciplined. They could be sanctioned if they actually give a summons out. And it puts their life, frankly, in danger as well, to have interactions with people, and arrest them and put them into jail, and also open themselves up to COVID-19. So I know that you know about that struggle, that push that we've had. We are in a coalition of, I think, 15 different groups to try to get the police chief to change his mind on it, but he has stubbornly refused.
I know they're not still doing police checks though, right?
Say it again?
Are they still doing police checks?
They're not doing, the checkpoints that they were doing before, and I think that's as a result directly of our work, not Court Watch NOLA, our coalition's work. That coalition of 15 different groups.
I'm sorry, guys. This is just one really personal concern that I have about the injustices that continue to occur in criminal court, and criminal and municipal court, because since Court Watchers have been involved in municipal court, I've actually been looking closer at the injustices that are happening there, and I'm just so saddened by, people going to jail for such minor offenses. You could have a verbal argument with someone and end up being incarcerated. And I have seen that. Do we have, are the statistics for municipal court kept separately from the statistics for the felony criminal court?
Yeah, they are. Do you have a question about them, Kim? I can take a look.
Yeah, I'd like to know what is the 85% of people that were 85% of the population that arrested was Black. I want to know what's happening in municipal court. What is that percentage? Do you have that?
I do. Let's see.
I love that.
Okay. So theirs were 131 out of 158. Let me do that real quick.
And just
So that's 83%.
83% of the people that went to
Were Black.
were Black.
Yes.
And do you have a statistics on how many people were jailed from municipal court?
Were jailed. So
because sometimes people can have charges in municipal and in criminal court. But right now, I just want to know with just municipal court.
Yeah.
That resulted in jail time. Because you guys keep is that one of the questions on your on the municipal court when people are arrested?
So all of the ones that we have all been jailed at a certain time. I don't know, usually it's like they're arrested one day and they're in court the day after, so they're released the day after, so they don't spend that long. There are, we were told that if they're spending time more than that in jail, it's because they have another hold. So it could be probation, parole, an out-of-state, out-of-parish warrant.
But, and that's really telling, especially during COVID-19 when, you are just arresting in order to release. Why would you arrest, open somebody up to the potential of getting infected with COVID-19, open a police officer to the potential of getting COVID-19, open a deputy sheriff to the possibility of getting COVID-19, only to release somebody afterwards.
It's heartbreaking.
It's ridiculous. And we had a favorite sheriff of ours, deputy sheriff of ours, that we dedicated our report to in part, Deputy Frazier, who was always in criminal district court. That was where he was stationed. And then when they closed down criminal district court, he was one of the first people to volunteer to go into the jail, and he got COVID-19 and eventually he passed away. And that jail, it's really it's such a huge concern why you would open anybody up to the potential of catching that disease there, and it's just business as usual. When we asked the police chief to change his policy and to issue more summonses, his response was, "We need people to stop committing crime." How can you say that? There's always going to be people that are going to be committing crime. That's just the reality. You have to make changes to the general community to decrease the amount of crime in that general community, but there won't ever be a time where we don't have crime. There's never been a community where there's been no crime.
I tell you, I don't know how they can be, to me, it's like you giving someone a death sentence just because they had an argument with their neighbor down the street, or and I understand that, but guess what? At a time when those things, and then they talk about with COVID-19, they talk about how one person's infection one person's diagnosis affects so many other people. A parent comes home with it, and all of their children, all of their neighbors, their parents, and everybody who's in their household is susceptible to it. Is
That's it.
could be exposed to it. So I'm just so sad about this, and and with all the unrest now, I am hoping that our elected leadership can realize they have a great opportunity to take the results that you have presented to us and really begin an effort personally, professionally, and humanely to move towards getting us out of these bad statistical goals, these statistical outcomes. I'm embarrassed to be a part of this with my friends across the country.
Yeah. And the money, Kim, the money. I mean, one of the things that we've seen is the amount of taxpayers' money that is being put in order for these public officials to defend themselves in these lawsuits when they themselves have been in the wrong, when they appeal the lawsuits at costing, tens of thousands of dollars. They'll appeal it, they'll lose the appeal, and we, the taxpayers, fit the bill. There was a lawsuit in 2019 against the District Attorney Canizero, for failing to turn over the fraudulent subpoenas. It was decided against him. He was forced to pay $20,000 in attorney's fees. And yet, then he goes to the city council, and last year he asked for $400,000 from city council in order to pay for his legal services. And, the year before, it says, the documentation we received says that he spent $346,000. And, the 2 years before that, $160,000 for his legal fees. And what do? We have over 100 articles in newspapers all across the country about how our prosecutor is incarcerating crime victims. That is the way that people express themselves. They express themselves through the news media. They express themselves through reports. They express themselves by being in the streets. There have been demonstrations against Canizero as well. And yet still, in our report, we found that District Attorney Canizero still attempted to incarcerate at least 8 crime victims. 7 of those crime victims were domestic violence victims. 7 of them were women, and all 8 of those crime victims he attempted to incarcerate were Black. And we just have these public officials that keep continuing to do the same thing that they're doing over and over and over again, and using our money to actually pay for their
reason to do it. Yeah, because it's taxpayers' money. It's our money. And God in heaven knows we could use that money in the community, especially here in the lower Ninth Ward. But
I do want to say
100% of the people that our district attorney incarcerated that were victims were Black.
Attempted to incarcerate. He did not find many of them. I have to tell you that.
Good.
And I wanted to, I just did a quick calculation when Simone was talking about the legal fees of $400,000 that the DA used for defending himself against these lawsuits.
Or requested.
That is 31 times the annual income of an indigent person, of someone who is at federal poverty level and therefore is represented by the public defender. And we know that in criminal court, the public defender represents, what is it, Simone, 85%?
85%
in criminal court.
And guess what? The public defender, his budget has been cut the most of all of the positions, all the areas in criminal court. His budget has been cut the most. So he falls short, and we just don't have enough. Public defenders have a job. They have a job to do. I don't know how they do it. And I see them in court, and I just, and it's already like we have a system that is so hurtful. It's so hurtful to the people in this community. You would think that our leadership would do better. And that's why I started Community Recallers. because we have got to get more organized about stopping this type of behavior.
Yeah, that's right.
The people, and that's why everybody in the city of New Orleans who has a chick, child, friend, a relative, or even they themselves have been involved in the criminal justice system here in New Orleans, they need to be a court watcher.
We
Everybody.
agree. We agree. And you can,
I'm calling for that. I'm really calling for that with your appearance today on the Tree Shaker show. We calling everybody to step up to be court watchers. We need more court watchers. The only thing that's going to stop this is when every single courtroom is observed every single day in order for us to
and
get
the
a handle on
community
it.
knows about it. And community goes through that process and then tells other community members. And we have stipends. If folks do monitor court, we are able to give them stipends for lunch. We're able to give them stipends for transportation. I mean, right now we are monitoring court by Zoom, so people don't even need to go into court, so they could just do it literally over the internet. Yeah, and collect data. That's really important to mention as well. But people have to share that experience. And I'm going to give you a phone number in case you want to call in order to be trained, and an email. The email address is volunteers@courtwatchnola.org, and Court Watch NOLA is all one word, so it's volunteers@courtwatchnola.org, and then the phone number is 504-356-3577. Again, it's 504-356-3577. You can talk to Jesse, who is Jesse and Darren, who are the people on staff that train court watchers in order to collect the data and hold witness, hold testament. There's every time that a court watcher is part of a proceeding, things are different. Things are always better. And if you're a victim in a case, or if you're a defendant in a case and you want us to monitor your individual case, we will do that as well. You just need to call us and let us know.
All righty. Thank you guys so much for being on Tree Shakers today. You have any closing words you want to give to us, Veronica? How are you feeling about the overall results of the were you thinking that the results were going to be what they were, or you were thinking they were going to be worse or better, or what?
I like to let the data lead me to my conclusions, Kim, to be honest.
Okay.
I try not to have expectations coming in, but I am disappointed. These judges, these public officials have been sued. That's why we have 3 branches of government, to hold these people accountable by the independent judiciary. They've been told that they're doing unconstitutional practices, and yet they still continue. And it's worse and worse and worse. And that's why we are tracking the COVID stats, because it's getting worse before it's getting better. I think the only silver lining that I have seen here, Kim, is that while in the report we had seen that the median bail amount was the $4,500 for defendants represented by public defenders, so indigent defendants, and since COVID it has been lowered to $2,000. So that's quite a good difference there.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would like to see is that the arrests just are minimal, are really just on those violent crimes that we can all agree as a community, okay, you are doing the community good by keeping them safe from this individual. And you're keeping the individuals in the jail system safe as well. But that is not what the data is showing. The data is showing that we are putting way too many people at risk.
Yes, I agree. I agree. And I'm hoping that, with the work that you guys are doing, that you offer us hope. You offer
You
us
offer
hope.
me hope all of the time, Kim Ford. I will say
Because
that.
if we can't even recognize, we have to first of all recognize that we have an issue to be able to overcome it. And so every time I get a report from Court Watch NOLA, I feel like it's another step towards overcoming the system of injustice that exists in criminal court. And the people
Agreed.
have got to want that. The people have got
Agreed.
to want that. And enough people have been uh, affected negatively by it that, now is the time. So I'm hoping that in this great uprising that the cream of Court Watch NOLA rises to the top. Okay, so thank you all so much. Thank you for your
Thank
work.
you, Kim.
Thank you,
And
Thank
I'm
Kim.
you so
honored to
much,
have you
Kim.
here. We
Could
got
not, I could not say it better. I really could not.
we have mutual admiration, and I love working with you. Thank you, Tree Shakers.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Be safe out there.
All righty. Okay, guys, that's it. We all.